Azura, the queen of the night sky, mother of the rose, the prince of dusk and dawn, the anticipation of Sotha-Sil. That one surprisingly pleasant Daedric Prince who gives you a reusable soul gem. Hello everyone, I'm Pebble with Boss Fog, and in today's video, we're going to be going through the history and lore of the Daedric Prince Azura. This will be the first video in a series on all 18 princes in the Pantheon, done in alphabetical order, from Azura through to Vermina and everything in between. Geez, 18 videos? I have a lot of work to do. But before we begin, I feel like it's a good idea to have a quick crash course in what a Daedric Prince is and where they came from, as this is the first video in the series. If you already know what they are, feel free to skip to this timestamp to begin the main part of the video, but if you need a refresher, let's get into it. To understand where the Daedric princes came from, we need to go back to the beginning. There's a lot of conflicting stories of how they came to be, so I'm going to keep it as broad as possible for simplicity's sake. Before everything, there were two beings named Anu, the personification of light and order, and Padme, the personification of chaos and change. Each birthed a soul from themselves, with Anu's soul being Anuiel, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Padme's being Sithis. Through their interplay, they created Orbis, the universe, which encompasses Mundus, Oblivion, and Aetherius. This event also birthed the beings who would later be known as the Aedra and Daedra, then known as the Etada. Anuiel then birthed their own soul, Auriel, or Akatosh, which prompted Sithis to birth their own soul, Lorcan. Lorcan then either convinced or tricked the Aedra into giving up their power to create Mundus, the mortal plane. Those beings who gave up their power were later called the Aedra, and were worshipped by the peoples of Mundus as gods in one form or another, whereas those who refused to participate in the creation of Mundus and created their own worlds through their power were called Daedra. Aedra translates to our ancestors in the Altmer language, while Daedra translates to not our ancestors. Essentially, the Daedra are beings who, for some reason or another, chose to hold on to their power and use their influence to create worlds that they could wholly control, and since they kept their power, they are immensely formidable. And while this isn't how all the princes in the Pantheon came into being, with Meridia, Malakath, and Sheogorath being the outliers, for the most part, that's the story of how the princes came to be. They also have a sphere of influence associated with them. They don't necessarily have control over these spheres, with some exceptions, but their spheres are the concepts that each of them relate to or embody the most, reflecting their character traits. Now that that's out of the way, let's delve into the lore of Azura. Like her brethren, Azura was originally an Etada, one of the first beings in the history of the Elder Scrolls. While some of her counterparts, the Aedra, sacrificed their power to create Mundus, Azura chose to hold on to her power and create a realm of her own, known as Moonshadow. Moonshadow is known as one of, if not the most beautiful realm in all of Oblivion and beyond, with a silver city as its centerpiece, expansive rose gardens, waterfalls, trees, miscellaneous flowers, and perfume-scented air. Azura herself resides in a palace of roses within the realm. Despite its beauty, it is an inaccessible plane of Oblivion, with only one person being known to have accessed it. The spheres of influence associated with Azura are dusk and dawn, the magic between day and night, and transition and change. The pleasant nature of this realm is also a direct reflection of Azura's personality. She's known as one of, if not the most, kind and benevolent of the Daedric princes. However, that doesn't mean that she's a pushover, as she is known to be considerably wrathful to those who draw her ire, such as Malin Varen, who attempted to gain immortality through storing his own soul in Azura's star, only to be dispatched by the Dragonborn. It's unwise to mess with a Daedric prince. Azura also has the ability to peer into the future, and has bestowed this gift upon her followers on numerous occasions. Overall, Azura is much kinder to her followers than other Daedric princes, seeming to genuinely care for their well-being, and even being venerated as a god on par with the Daedra, but we'll get to that later. Now, let's get on to Azura's history in the Elder Scrolls games. In the first age, there were two races of beings called the Needs and the Aelids. Years before, the Needs had been enslaved by the Daedra-worshipping Aelids, and, after a war, the Needs had earned their freedom from them. Tensions were running high some years later, for obvious reasons, and upon an Aelid messenger getting killed, both sides were blaming each other for the murder. It was later found out that one of Molag Bal's servants was responsible for this murder. Typical. And had orchestrated it to undermine Azura's influence. Azura's champion, Kalanwe, set out to put an end to Molag Bal's plots, but was captured and tortured in Cold Harbor for thousands of years. Don't worry, you save her later on. After Molag Bal destroyed the Valenwood city of Gilvardel, which, funnily enough, was caused when an elsewhere king called on Molag Bal to level the city after hearing a bad performance from a bard. The Cold Harbor Compact was instigated when Sothasil, of the Tribunal of Dunmer worship, somehow convinced 8 of the Daedric princes that they could only exert their will on the mortal plane through followers, these princes being Molag Bal, thank God, Boethia, probably a good idea, Hermaeus Mora, Hircine, Malakath, Mehrunes Dagon, guess he didn't get the memo during the Oblivion Crisis, Sheogorath, definitely a good idea, and Azura. So, this pact made sure Azura could only interfere in the affairs of mortals by proxy, but she skirts that line in the ages to come. On to the Second Age. During the events of the Elder Scrolls Online, Azura called upon the Vestige, fun fact, that's you, to help her free the soul of one of her followers from the depraved claws of Molag Bal. I'm noticing a pattern here. Kindest Daedric Prince versus the worst Daedric Prince? Makes sense. She also had the Vestige free her oracles from various pocket realms of Oblivion. She then later helped the Vestige and the tribunal god Vivec by restoring Vivec's power in order to stop a meteor from destroying Vardenfell, a plot orchestrated by Barbas, a manifestation of Clavicus Vile. Bad dog. During the events of Daggerfall, Azura charged the player character with killing a monk who had gotten on her bad side. I told you she was wrathful, and awarded them with Azura's star for their work. That'll become common as we go along. Azura takes on a more prominent role during the events of the Elder Scrolls Morrowind, with her dubbing the player character as the Nerevarine, named after one of her champions, Indoril Nerevar. Over the course of the game, she guided and gave knowledge to the player character to help them on their journey, with the ultimate goal of defeating Dagoth-Ur and stopping his attempts to make a second Numidium, a giant Dwemer construct that could conquer the world. She also gives the player character Azura's star, as a gift for helping her win a bet with Sheogorath, wherein the player character defeated Sheogorath's servants who were trying to disrupt one of Azura's servants who vowed to live in silence for 100 years. Little bit of sibling rivalry. Grrr. And finally, during the Oblivion Crisis, Azura charged the hero of Kvatch with dispatching some of her followers who had turned into vampires. Oh my god, Molag, can you leave my girl alone? Seriously, this is getting ridiculous. No prizes for guessing what you earned from her during this quest. It's Azura's star. Next! So, remember that meteor that was stopped by Vivec that I mentioned earlier? Yeah, that didn't last long. Vivec didn't completely get rid of the meteor over Vardenfell, but only held it in place directly over the island, keeping it there only as long as the Dunmer people loved him. He disappeared in the early 4th era, which caused the meteor to become unstable. An Ingenium, a construct powered by souls going directly to Clavicus Vile, yes, he returns, was made to keep it in place by 2 Dunmer named Vuhan and Sul. Sul then destroyed the Ingenium in order to protect his lover, which caused the meteor to fall and utterly destroy Vardenfell and cause the Red Mountain to erupt. Before this happened, Azura had told her priests to flee Vardenfell before this cataclysm and, in honor of her, created the Azura Shrine in Skyrim. Many years later, during the events of Skyrim, Azura charged the last Dragonborn with retrieving her star from a rogue mage from the College of Winterhold, Malyn Varen, who had corrupted her artifact to store black souls, thereby gaining immortality by storing his own soul within the star. The Dragonborn then defeats Malyn, gaining both Azura's favor as well as, you guessed it, Azura's star as a prize. Azura has a special relationship with the Dunmer of Tamriel. The Dunmer view her as one of their god ancestors, along with Boethia and Mayfala, and has guided their civilization since time immemorable. Allegedly, she taught the Chimer, basically the Dunmer before they were Dunmer, to be different from the Altmer, and the Altmer land that they were leaving, which correlates with her sphere of representing transition and change. After the Battle of Red Mountain, after the disappearance of the Dwemer and the Tribunal gaining the tools of Kagrenac, which would allow them to control the heart of Lorkhan, an immensely powerful artifact, the Tribunal vowed to Azura that they would never use these tools. But, as we all know, power is a fickle thing, and the Tribunal used the tools to become gods. Infuriated by this betrayal, Azura cursed the Chimer, turning their golden skin to ash and their eyes red. However, the Dunmer don't see this as a bad thing, interpreting it as being closer to their Lady Azura. Azura is known as the anticipation of Sothisil, basically venerating one of the Dunmer's mightiest people as an aspect of her, but I doubt she finds that very flattering considering the whole betrayal thing. The Khajiit and Azura certainly have an interesting relationship, as well as a really unique mythos surrounding her. Known as Azura with an H on the end to the Khajiit, they believe her spheres are beauty, magic, and prophecy, among other things. She is held in very high regard and elsewhere, being treated as a god, with the Khajiit believing that Azura judges them at the gates of the crossing upon their death. They also believe that she has three forms, a Khajiit, an elf, and a human form. The Khajiit myth of how she came to be is very similar to the main creation myth, only with different names and some cat stuff thrown in. So I'm going to continue using the names I mentioned in the beginning of the video to make keeping up with it a little easier. It is said that Azura was born to Anu and Padme, and, upon Anu striking Padme, she fled with Azura and the rest of Azura's siblings into the Great Darkness, or the Void, where Padme gave birth to Lorkhan before dying. Before she died, however, she gave each of her children a gift, leaving Azura till last, whereupon she gave her the instructions of how to create the Khajiit. The next part of the myth is fairly similar to the one before, with Lorkhan tricking his siblings into giving up their power to create Mundus. This act killed many of Padme's children, so the survivors tore out his heart. Unlike in the other myths, Lorkhan survived because the Great Darkness had seeped into his blood and filled the hole where his heart was. In this myth, the Great Darkness is synonymous with the Daedric Prince Namira. Lorkhan then reached out to Azura for help. Knowing the names of every spirit, she cast back Namira's darkness, revealing the dark heart for what it was, and ripped it out. Ouch. She then threw the heart into the void, where it became the first Dromathra, a corrupted Khajiit. Lorkhan then died, cradled by Azura. As a result of this kindness, Azura would gain the ability to summon the spirit of Lorkhan to aid her, which came in useful when Nocturnal, who was born from the blood that seeped from Lorkhan's dark heart, according to the myth, stole one of Azura's keys, the skeleton key for those wondering, and ran off to the void before being caught by Lorkhan. Azura seems to hold contempt for the Dwemer race, which, to be fair, is putting it mildly. The Dwemer were a race that constantly pushed the limits of what was possible, be that through magic or engineering, and questioned the veracity of the gods on many occasions. Upon discovering the heart of Lorkhan, the Dwemer created tools in order to harness its power to ascend to godhood or gain immortality for their race. They constructed a massive brass golem, Numidium, and placed the heart within, calling it their own god. Azura was wholly against the construction of this brass god, deeming it a danger for everyone in the world, and told her champion Nerevar about it. This led to the events of the Battle of Red Mountain and the disappearance of the Dwemer. Some tales state that Azura had direct involvement in using the Heart of Lorkhan to make the Dwemer vanish, but accounts of the battle and its events are murky. Nevertheless, Azura certainly had resentment for the Dwemer, for their supposedly profane activities. Normal stuff for a Daedra god, mommy. Who said that? The main artifact associated with Azura is one that we all know well, Azura's Star. It essentially functions as an infinite soul gem, being able to store white souls, those being the souls of lesser creatures, and not being lost upon use. It can't store black souls in it, but hey, that's morally right, so go Azura for putting a hard cap on it. Another of her artifacts is the Moon and Star Ring, which was given to Azura's champion, Nerevar. This ring was said to have given Nerevar incredible persuasion skills, speech increased to 1 million, and had the ability to kill anyone who put it on, with the exception of Nerevar. It is also historically important, with it helping Nerevar unite the Chimer clans and also helping the Nerevarine unite the people of Morrowind to defeat Dagoth-Ur. Up next we have the Moonlight Blade, a crescent sword associated with the Khajiit. In the right hands, it had the ability to cut through the barriers between worlds, an action encouraged by Azura, who hoped her followers would use it to guide souls into the afterlife. Finally, we have Azura's Ring, which was given to the Nerevarine at the end of Morrowind, after defeating Dagoth-Ur. It allowed the user to see in the dark, as well as gave them extra endurance. And, as a little added bonus, we can include the Skeleton Key because, as was mentioned earlier, the Khajiit believe it originally belonged to Azura before it was stolen by Nocturnal. It opens any door and is unbreakable. Great for a thief. And that's the end of the video, lads. If you made it this far, hope you enjoyed it. Up next I'm going to be covering another of the Daedra worshipped by the Dunmer, Boethia, who is a pretty big departure from Azura's benevolent nature. If you guys have anything to add to what I've said, fun facts, comments, lore tidbits, don't hesitate to put them down below. Reading them is always a treat. Anyway, thank you again for watching. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.